What's going on, guys? So today we're going to do a little video on the Autel Evo 2 Pro 6K regarding photography settings and what I would do for utilizing this drone as a still photographer. So I had some people commenting saying they wanted to know a little bit more about what my settings were and that there wasn't a lot on YouTube or online regarding the photography settings for the Evo 2 Pros. So I'm going to go and hopefully help explain a bit. I've been having a lot of issues recording this video because one time I had my camera battery die, another time I had my Rode Wireless Go 2 mic battery die, mic battery, there we go. And 3 is right now, and we're gonna see, again, I've been having a lot of issues with my Autel Explorer app with things just not working the right way. So a lot of times I'll go ahead and try to adjust a setting and it won't actually take and register. So I've been working with Autel. I sent them one of my screen recordings that I had from yesterday and I didn't hear back, but they said supposedly they haven't had a lot of issue, but I did talk to Evan over there at one point and he said that there is some type of connectivity issue, and that's why I think the smart controller will actually help out a lot, at least eliminating that, but it's gonna come at a cost at around $1,200. So that's a big amount to spend, but at the same time, this is gonna be something that hopefully will be nice to have, a dedicated device that won't have any connectivity issues and maybe make the Autel flying experience a bit more rewarding, because so far it's been pretty frustrating, honestly, and DJI definitely has a nicer experience altogether. So without any further ado, let's get this guy out of the case and get it up in the air and walk you through some of the photography settings. So this case and this drone is a bit larger. So the case that I got is this hard Autel Robotics case, and as you see, a little bigger footprint, the biggest case I have so far, but it's not that crazy. You fit 4 batteries in here, which is nice. You fit the drone. So this Autel Evo 2 Pro, all the arms fold out. They don't fold under or down. So we got this guy like this. And honestly, it's not that much bigger of a footprint than the Mavic 2 series. It may look a little bit bigger, but really it's not. It's pretty minor as far as the size. It's nothing really shockingly big. So don't be, worried about that. You're not flying a bus. I mean, it's pretty minor. The winds are actually picking up. I don't know what they are. I think they're like 25-mile-an-hour gusts. So this thing can handle, but I did fly in some high winds and it didn't do that well. I mean 40-mile-an-hour plus winds, which I probably shouldn't even have launched, but I tried to see how this thing would handle, and honestly, it handled pretty poorly. My Air 2S I took out the next day, which was still really windy, like 30+ mile an hour, and it handled a lot better. So there is that. We got the gimbal cover, which we just kind of pull away from the drone. Then this guy will come off, pretty simple. We have 4 batteries. Each one of these batteries will be roughly 40 minutes. So the battery definitely is really a good thing about the Autel drones. This lasts a long time and you do get a lot of life out of the flight. So these guys got 4 of them. They're roughly $200 each. So again, you almost have like $1,000 between 4 batteries in the hub. So it can add up a little bit. And then with the smart controller, you're really at a pretty high price point, like $2,000, $3,000, almost $4,000 plus for this drone and the case and the batteries and the charger and the hub and the smart controller and yada, yada, yada. We have the actual remote. And this guy is, again, not too bad, but the new smart controller should actually remedy this guy and be a lot bigger upgrade. So it has these 2 little handles that do fold out. We got the area for the smartphone. I got an iPhone 12 Pro Max that fits nicely in the remote with the case. I got a little USB-A 90-degree angle lightning. This is from Drone Valley. Those guys are really nice over there. They have a lot of really nice drone accessories, so check them out. We're gonna take this and put the antennas downward. So supposedly this is the best reception for this drone and this remote, having the antennas facing down. I'm gonna put this guy through the middle. And this is the first time I launched the app because I was having issues, as I said, with the Autel Explorer app, so I deleted it and reinstalled it. I did that yesterday, but I'm doing it again today for the sake of the tutorial, and I'm hoping that helps show the initial setup that I'm gonna go ahead and do. So for those who just got this drone, for example, you can go and do exact same settings, and it should get you in the good ballpark to what you're going to want to take good pictures with this drone. So I'm going to go ahead and power this remote on. I'm going to power the drone on. I'm going to start a screen recording, and we're going to go ahead and get through some of these settings and see what we're going to do to get this thing rocking. So I got my screen recording going. I'm going to go ahead and get into the Autel Explorer app. Now, mind you, I just reinstalled this app, so it's going to start fresh. And we're going to go and hit camera. That's what we're going to do to get into the app. It's going to say, before powering on the aircraft, make sure the battery is securely installed, blah, blah, blah. We're going to say, do not show this again. And as you see, we're going to put in the sticks towards the center, downward. So just the same way we're going to start a DJI drone, for example. So pretty easy. The wind is picking up. And if we see, right now, it's way overexposed. So I'm going to hit in the lower right-hand corner this little up arrow. And that's going to bring up these settings. So I'm going to go ahead and see where everything is at. My ISO for some reason is high. I'm going to always keep my ISO at 100 for the most part. I'm going to go ahead and keep my aperture. So unlike the Air 2S, which has a fixed aperture f2.8, I can go ahead and stop this thing down, meaning get a bigger number and go to f11, for example. So now I have f11 and I can keep my shutter speed a little bit more manageable, somewhere maybe around 120th of a second. And that looks pretty good. So we got that set. And what I'm going to do, I think, is, I don't know if I'm going to take off yet, but I can go ahead and minimize this map by hitting in the upper left-hand corner that little target, and that will minimize it and give you that. And I'm going to get out of the video settings by hitting the little button below the shutter, below the red button, and this will toggle me into still pictures. So let's start from the bottom. So again, I can hide this by hitting that little down arrow and this little up arrow all the way to the bottom right. If I tap that, it will bring up all these settings. So we have, from the left, we have their file size. We got our different modes like burst mode and bracket mode. We got our file format, manual exposure, aperture, shutter, ISO, exposure compensation, white balance, digital zoom, which I really don't use unless you absolutely need to. You're not going to get a good file out of that, but it is there if you need it. We got autofocus, manual focus, and I was having issues with this for some reason, not pulling up this little bar yesterday, so we're going to go over that later. And we have color mode, which I don't get into. I leave it at none all the time, and different styles that we can fine tune. But let's go over, whoop, get me out of that. I swiped out of the app. Let it connect again. So we're going to start from the left to the right. So we have our file size, and right now we have it at 5472 pixel by 3648 at a 3.2 ratio. And then we have the little larger one. Again, that's a 16.9 ratio. So say, for example, you're taking a still picture that you want to use maybe in your edit. And then we have this smaller 16:9 ratio at 3840 by 2160 pixels. And so you guys are aware, if you go, someone was asking if it has HDR. It only has HDR built in if we go to the smallest file size. So you'll see, oh, and if you go to actually JPEG only. So I got to switch this little file format to JPEG. And now it should show up. Oop, let me click out of there. Why isn't it showing up? Boom, boom. It should show up. Oh, because I'm on manual exposure. You got to be set to auto. So there we go. So we have to have, that's the little secret handshake. We got to be auto exposure, JPEG format, and let me see what file size. So we know it works with this one, with the 3840 by 2160. It doesn't work with the next larger one, and it doesn't work with any one except this guy. So that's kind of strange. I don't know why, but if you tap this little HDR button to the left of the shutter, it will actually highlight blue, and that means we're taking an HDR type shot. So that's probably a reason why I'm never going to utilize this, is because it's a smaller file, and it's just something that I don't want to sacrifice shooting in JPEG file format. So I'm going to leave it set to here. So this is essentially what I'm going to have my camera settings set at the majority of time. So let's move over one more notch. We have single mode. So this, if you hit the little question mark right above this little single, it will actually give you an explanation. So it says burst mode allows camera to take quick series of photos rapidly. Great for action sports, so that's similar to something you would utilize on a GoPro, for example. Time lapse lets you take timed interval of images to be captured. We have auto exposure bracketing, so that's something I would utilize, but at the same time, it's actually adjusting the ISO and the shutter speed. So ideally, it doesn't adjust the ISO to introduce noise into the brackets, but that's the way it is. So it would be nice if it just adjusted, say, for example, the shutter speed only. But between all of these modes, I'd probably maybe utilize burst if I was shooting maybe a wave or something like that, or something that I needed to try to get a burst type shot. Time lapse we can go ahead and tap it again. We have 2 second, 5 second, 7 second, 10 second, 20 second, 30 second, and 60 second. So I don't know when you would use 60 second personally, but I would keep it at 2 or 5. And you have to be, I believe, let me see, JPEG plus RAW, I believe it will only go to 5 second. So if you have it at JPEG, it will actually go to 2 second as well. So I'd probably keep it at that for now and utilize the 2 second JPEG if I am trying to get a time lapse. So again, over here right now I'm going to go to single shot. Let me launch this thing and get it in the air just for kicks. So I'm going to take off. Drone is going in the air. And there we go. We're going to have it hover. So from here, JPEG, for the file format, you could have JPEG RAW or JPEG plus RAW. I'm going to always keep it set to JPEG plus RAW because the file sizes are so small that there's really no reason not to have both captures just in case you can utilize them. And you have a 256 gig card, for example, for probably $40. So to me, there's no real reason you shouldn't be capturing both. We have the auto exposure mode, manual, shutter priority, or aperture priority. For me, I'm going to always have it either the majority of the time on manual, but if I were to opt for something else, I'd probably keep it at auto just to play around or get some easy flight where I didn't really care too much, almost like it is right now. I can take a picture, and I'm capturing in both JPEG plus RAW. But I'm going to go ahead and keep it in manual right now, and as I said, unlike the Air 2S with a fixed 2.8 aperture, we can go ahead and dial it down, open up to 2.8, which means bring the smaller number, which will allow more light into the diaphragm of the lens, or we can go and stop down, which means close the diaphragm and give us more depth of field and more focus with the larger number, in theory. So I'll take another picture because it actually is a beautiful scene with the clouds. But people want to know, the bigger the number, meaning the smaller the diaphragm opening, is going to give you more depth of field and more focus. So if you want the maximum amount of focus, I would stay somewhere between f8 and f11. And if you're just trying to get the most amount of light out of your aperture, open up and make that diaphragm opening as big as possible at f2.8. And then we have our shutter speed, which I believe goes from 8 seconds all the way to 1/8,000th of a second. So that's our adjustment over there. Our ISO, I'm going to keep at 100 the majority of time if possible. The higher the number, the more noise and grain that you're going to be introducing into your files and footage. This is going to be our little exposure compensation area. It's saying I'm 3/10 underexposed. So say, for example, I want to go, and it should shift as the light goes. Let me go to 1/20th. Now it's saying a little overexposed, so I'm going to go back down to 1/60th, and that's going to be, as I said, our shutter, which most people know about. We have our white balance, which most of the time I'm going to stay out of auto because you don't want your, especially when you're flying, you don't want it fluctuating and going warmer and cooler. So keep it at something specific, like sunny for a sunny day like today. We got cloudy, which is going to be a little warmer, incandescent, going to be bluer, neon, and just visually look and see which one looks best. I'm going to stick with sunny. That looks perfect, honestly. Digital zoom I'm going to avoid because I tried 8x, for example, yesterday, and it just looks like doo-doo balls. So Stay away from digital zoom really any chance you can, unless you absolutely need to use it for something specific, like just getting a capture of something just because you absolutely need to see it. Now next we have this autofocus area, and this is obviously autofocus. I can tap on the screen, say that building over there, and it should, in theory, pull focus on that building. We can go ahead and hit manual focus, and this is where I've been having issues. It should, like you saw in the beginning, pull up this little scroll wheel, and it's not. So this is a bug or something in the app that I just have an issue with, and it's been really frustrating. I'm going to come back to this later, but there should be a little scroll wheel right above it with a little flower and a little infinity sign, and you actually scroll and click. You got to actually physically tap to have it engage, and then you should be able to go and do, see, it's not even giving me this option because the setting isn't taking when I'm hitting manual focus. So I'm going to go out of there, and this is our different modes. I'm never going to utilize this. This would be something I would use if I was in video mode, shooting log, but there's no reason to shoot log for still pictures. And as you see, it's not even taking the setting. So this is an issue with the app and the connectivity that Autel needs to work on. They're making it sound like it's only happening to me or something, but I find that hard to believe. Using a brand new iPhone 12 Pro S, using 14.5 for the iOS, I don't know why this is happening. So let me try to close out of here. I'm going to force quit the app. Close everything down. I have too much open, honestly. I didn't even realize I had all this open. But it was happening with nothing open all day yesterday. So let's see what we can find and see if it works for us again. So I'm going to click out of the app, click back into it. I'll actually unplug the USB-A cable and plug it back in. And now we should be connected again. It should go color. Oh, I think it's in one of the modes, so I thought it wasn't even registered, so I'm going to go to none. So again, I never use this. The only time I'd use this section is if I was shooting video, I'd go to log. So autofocus, let's see what happens. So now it is giving me this, so you could see how buggy it is and really frustrating. But I'll go and show you, if you hit this little camera icon to the lower right-hand corner, it will give you additional options. So what I'm going to want to make sure I have enabled is this grid. They have a rule of thirds grid, but I'm going to do the grid and the line, hit the little back button, and then I'm going to go to the center point and hit this cross. That's what I prefer. Play with whatever you want, but this to me is what works best for orbiting and just having a really good section to go and kind of target and lock into what you're flying. But this works best for me, so do what you want and experiment. So this is what we're going to want if we're shooting in manual focus, this manual focus assist. I'm going to click that, and it's going to show me in red what's most in focus. So if I scroll this wheel, I got to actually scroll it, say where this 5 is, and click on it. And it's going to not show me what's in focus because basically it's probably way too close. So I'm going to scroll and hit maybe 45 in that range. And if I click, if I press the screen, in theory what it was supposed to do is zoom in and show me, but it's not doing that. So I don't know. This is something personally that I would just avoid for now, for me, because this doesn't even show up all the time. So I'm going to stick with autofocus for the moment, get out of there. But be aware, in this lower right-hand corner, this little camera icon, it's going to give us additional settings. So we got the grid, which I showed you I use. We're going to have the histogram enabled, and the histogram essentially is a graphical representation of our exposure. So this all hugging in the middle is basically a good histogram reading. If we're all to the left, it's going to be too dark. So if I go ahead and adjust, say, my shutter speed and get it a lot faster, letting in less light, it's going to be way dark and move over to the left. If I go and make a longer shutter meaning keep it open longer, it's going to be really bright and hug to the right. So we don't want that. We want it somewhere right in the middle. I think 1/20th of a second was pretty good. And just be aware of that. And then we have lock gimbal while shooting. I never use. Defog essentially is like a dehaze, so you can kind of dial it in, almost similar to an in-camera dehaze filter that you may be familiar with Camera Raw, plug-in with Lightroom or Photoshop. But for the most part, I'm going to keep that off, but it actually doesn't look too bad sometimes. But again, I'm going to keep this off for now. And we're going to try to get over here, take that away. And then ROI is region of interest. So I don't really know what this does. Apparently it's strictly for video, and it does something with if the transmission gets out of range, it will make sure it keeps the right resolution, something along those lines. Autel honestly didn't even really know a ton about it, so if they don't know, I don't really care about it. We got the overexposure warning, which is our zebra stripe. I'm going to keep that off as well. And we have basically anti-flicker, video format. That's not going to have to do with the photo side of things. We have our reset camera, format the SD card and flash card, and that's about it. So just be aware, and you just tap the screen to click out of there. So if we click that little camera icon, it will show all this. And if we click the screen, it will get back out of that. And if we click the little down arrow, it will hide everything and get that out of the way. And we could physically move the histogram anywhere we want. And really, that's about it. So again, a little buggy. I don't know why, that if I go and try to go into, where is it now? The autofocus. Let's see what happens if I go in the manual focus again. But again, be aware, it's working right now, thankfully. But if you go ahead and scroll, you got to actually physically tap on the bar to get it to work. And I would take advantage of using the manual focus assist. And wherever is in red is going to be most in focus. So I'm going to go ahead and click again. And you could kind of see, I thought it was supposed to enlarge the area. But again, kind of a weird little thing, probably could be refined, but I'm going to stay out of manual focus for now. So my setting is going to be autofocus and tapping on the area to make sure that it is focusing on the right subject. So let's walk you through a little quick photo shoot if I was going to take a picture. So right now I'm above my town, and as you see, I have my file size the largest. There's no need for a burst rate or anything, or even a bracket because I'm shooting RAW. I got JPEG plus RAW. I'm shooting manual exposure. I'm keeping it at f11 just because I want the most depth of field. So the bigger the number, the more focus in theory should be happening. I'm going to go ahead and look at my histogram. It's a little bit overexposed, just a tad. So I'm going to go and maybe go to 1/60th, maybe even 1/200th, because I know I can lighten the image. And I'm going to make sure my ISO is at 100, so I have the cleanest image. And I'm going to go ahead and swipe up on the screen to see my full composition, and then take a picture by depressing the button on the controller or physically hitting this little white button. And I can go and preview it by hitting that little area. So this is the first time, again, I just reinstalled the app. And we could see that it looks pretty good. So everything looks nicely exposed. It looks like it's maybe a little, I don't know if it looks out of focus just on here, but I'm going to be aware of that and take another shot. So I'm going to go ahead and focus, say, on this building, and let me try and see what happens while I take another picture. And I'm going to zoom in and see if that one looks any better as far as the focus is concerned. Because sometimes it's hard to tell on the actual display. So this looks pretty soft too, and determine if there was an issue. But let me try to go into the manual focus, and we can see that I'm looking at that building off to the left. We're looking to try to get it more red. So that's less red. Let me go all the way to 50. There should be a way to see, because did I just zoom in? So I just did the digital zoom on accident. But let me go ahead and hit autofocus. I'm going to tap on the building. Let me tap over here. I'm going to go back into manual focus. And in theory, it should be. See, it's not even giving me this little grid, so it's messing up. And it's one of those things where I just don't enjoy that part of a drone flying experience. When the software and the app is janky and sucks and is inconsistent, really kind of pisses me off and gives me a real bad taste in my mouth as far as having a good, fun flight. Because this is just BS, honestly, to have an app with my latest, greatest iPhone having this kind of simple, I can't even get a setting to pull up the correct way. But if I am wanting to possibly get a little bit more and bracket, since light is going in and out, I would go ahead and do the auto exposure bracket and click, and it will simply take 3 pictures, and essentially between the JPEG plus the RAW and the 3 different exposures, I'm going to almost for sure get a shot that is going to be good for exposure. So my battery is about to die. I'm going to fly home. But again, just be aware that when you're taking a picture, if you have this auto exposure bracket set and the histogram is somewhat correct, hugging in the middle, you're most likely going to get a shot that's going to be good exposure. And we'll check the focus to see how that looks. But I'm going to go ahead and take another picture, land the drone. So hopefully this helps, guys. For now, that's it. I'm going to go and fly, take some shots, and we'll reconnect with another video later. Let me know if this helps. If it has, hit the thumbs up button, subscribe, and aloha, guys. Thank you.